Thank you. I'd like to welcome Councillor Scott to the meeting.
Thank you.
And also we have Councillor Henderson here, who will be talking on the later agenda item. So welcome. Thank you, Chair. Minutes of the last meeting.
Chairman, they're there. Obviously, if members, if someone wants to move acceptance, then the chairman can sign those as an agreed record.
Yep.
And it's seconded, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Item 5, Deputy Leader's introduction to the economic growth, regeneration and tourism portfolio and its focus. Just for anyone listening in, this is something we discussed as a committee, and we're going to ask a different portfolio holder along to each meeting, just to give us a brief overview of where they see things going in the next 4 years. So it's not a scrutiny of their of what they intend to do, it's more to hear what their plans are for the future. So with that, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chairman, and thanks very much for giving me answer any questions that you may have on the back of them. But first of all, can I thank the committee for actually coming to this the Sunspot this evening, and I'm sure you, as well as I, am really pleased that the building is now open and ready for use. Before I go on to the Sunspot, we've set 5 themes. One is pride in our area and services to residents. The second one is raising aspirations and creating opportunities. The third one is championing our local environment. The fourth is working with partners in the building and operating for people to come and see and create some of their manufacturing. The other projects is what we did call the Starling site, the long-awaited Starling site, which is going to be called just words. What we want to do is turn those words into a reality and see the benefits from them and deliver from what Level Up actually is. And I'm committed to delivering those Level Up projects both in Dovercourt and in Clacton. A working party, and I'm sure members have been appointed to that, and I look forward to meeting with members and going through the progress as we go along. And so there's 5 projects. There's new homes in Dovercourt. There's improvements to back adult community learning to the town, which was taken away a while ago. So that's the is Freeport East. What I want to see is Freeport East bringing benefits to tendering, and some of those benefits we need to look at is the opportunity for skills training, careers advice and jobs, because unless we have those skills, and unless we let, if you like, ahead of the game. And then the other projects which we're making sure we deliver are the creative in culture. And hopefully the people who have made those bids will bring benefits, and I'm sure they will, to the tendering district. And we've also just launched the Rural England Prosperity Fund. It launched on September the 9th, providing capital funding for community groups and businesses, 70,000 for community groups and 100,000 for businesses. No match, what a fantastic showcase for Tendring District, and all praise to those who have made sure that's been a success for over those years. And that's right and proper that we do that. So we will be reviewing the process, but again, we look forward to next year's. And I'm sure, again, I'll go back to what I mentioned earlier. We do realise we're in challenging financial times. Bringing in government and partners funding, whether the UKSPF or the REPF or the ASUF, hope everyone remembers those what they mean. It's key to deliver on. I'm just taking up the baton, if you like, and actually finishing the job on this one. There's a lot more to do. Again, if I can, if not, I'll pass on.
That's fair enough. Is there anyone, Chris?
Thank you. Thank you, that was really good. Just a question in regards to the levelling up. Have you?
I know, speaking to various people, that there are plans for creation and support and construction jobs and training and skills. You're right with the Freeport. It's one of my concerns, has been for a long time, that there's not enough careers advice out there, and early enough times at school are aware of what opportunities are ahead of them. Is for green energy, you know, wind farm. I speak to the wind farm industry, and they're talking about these are really long-term opportunities, and we do need to actually.
People getting into training, that we're hoping to see those projects come forward shortly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously, I've already had sight of they'll actually be training people there and then for those particular jobs.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions?
Can I just add to that, along the same theme, with, and I know you've spoken about construction, but would there be any scope from any pots of money to maybe offer bursaries for people coming out of school that want to join the nursing apprenticeship scheme? Because actually when people think of nursing, they automatically think that it's nursing within a hospital, but actually occupational nursing.
I know for a fact people in Harwich, in my area, find it very hard to get to Colchester to college. Their parents would probably make a decision that they couldn't go purely on the cost. So that is something I think in the round we've all got to look at. All the partners and all of these projects need to actually look at to make sure that those opportunities are available for everyone.
Well, might be very helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, Chris, and I do know that there is talk. I can't. There was because I was involved. Isn't that the health? There's some health.
The health have an ambassador. Yeah, the ambassador scheme.
It's like that over, but it is that real opportunity for people to kind of come and walk in to a place.
Nursing. So as a society, what have we done, and how can we look locally to try and encourage our younger children to think that actually, you know, I really would like to do that.
We have a couple of steps forward.
And one of the, if I can say, one of the things I've recognised over my time, it's not just the children, it's the parents. You've got to get right through to their parents, because there's an opportunity for their children, so we need to actually get beyond those children. We look at, we'll go into that, the facilities which are here, but I think this building presents opportunities, because some of that could be outreach. And you could have a session in here offering those kind of advisory sessions and careers opportunity sessions for something, because we want to make use of this place and we want to get the benefits from it. Then let's, you know, think outside the box and make sure that.
It's a brilliant idea, I think.
Thanks very much. I'm mindful that we don't turn this into a scrutiny session, which so the council member hasn't had time to really prepare. From a council in the audience who'd like to ask a question, so perhaps we can finish on that one if you're okay. That's Councillor Casey.
It's a lovely building. I come down here. How are we doing with the letting? Are we on track to have a full centre? Do you know where we stand at the moment?
I'll come down. I'm quite happy to answer that, and I'll come to the next bit if you like. And then, if you share it.
If they're answering that at the next stage, have you any points there?
No, that's just talking about what we're doing with the letting.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, well obviously we've come to the end of that bit because we didn't want to make it a scrutiny session, but it's put you on the spot so early. Tell us your vision for the future and answer a few questions. So with that, I'd like to move to review of the work programme. I'll just say a few words on that. The first thing that we're looking at is planning enforcement. The meeting group has met on that for the first time, and we're now looking at a second date, so we are underway on our schedule. Item 7, which is post-delivery scrutiny on the Sunspot commercial workspace, which is the reason that we're at this venue this evening, so we're on the spot. So with that, I think it'd be nice to start with a brief history of how we got where we are today. I don't know who's doing that from yourselves, but I wonder if you could start with that.
I'll lead in it if you like, and then I'm sure I'm going to need some backup. You're right, the Sunspot. It looks like we've hit the spot running. We've got this, some really good news just past. I've had to change my figures. But yeah, in terms of the Sunspot, as I said earlier, this is the whole of this has been a cross-party effort. I've been really pleased to see the progress and such a really good opportunity provided for Jaywood. And as I said to you earlier, which has gone on in the past on the previous administration. So the Sunspot offers 24 affordable with advice on hand in this location. And we have, I had down on paper 8 businesses already signed up. I can now tell you, look in your report, it says we were expecting a 10% take up, we were on 33%, we're even higher than that now. So that's really good news, and that's a really good start to the building. Yeah, so there's on-site advice. We've got our operations manager, unfortunately, Nicholas would have been here, but he's unwell. Opportunity for members to meet him, and he'll be here to support our tenants and offer advice. He's having training at the moment as the support, although he's fairly experienced, I understand. Anyway, so then we've got the covered market, open 10 pictures involved in that. And then we've got that lovely community garden which members have walked around, and I'm sure that's going to come on and look even better, and hopefully the community and tenants will enjoy time in that garden. And then we've got the person who's taking it over with already experience. He's got the sea breeze on the seafront and here, and he's already got links, or he has links in the past to here. So we've got a real local person taking over and also during the building of this, we know that at least the site manager actually is a resident within the district, and we know that there's other construction workers. So, where we are now, this has seen employment opportunities, providing employment opportunities to people. There's space in here for office space, but there's also space in here, we believe, for meeting and conferences. And as I've already said, there will be an office here. There's 24 plus 1, 25. The operation managers on site. What we're hoping to do is, and I'm sure it will do, and we're seeing it will, we're already seeing that the cafe downstairs is going to take on apprentices, so that's really good. And strong partnership work in delivering this, and again, we can champion this building to see where we are now. And again, looking at the design of the building, I'm sure everyone's really pleased to having walked around. It's something for us all to be very proud of, and hopefully the community and those tenants will be too. So some of the problems, and I'm sure this is where I'll probably be picking up some of the issues. That we all know that it's gone well above cost. And it's also been delayed. It's due to capital cost inflation. Everyone and every project, I should imagine, in the country at the moment is suffering from the same impact. It suffered, even when the bid went forward, and the time that the tenders were going out, and between those tenders coming in and the successful tenders being chosen, those delays even cost us because the inflation was hitting us during that time. And I think when you look at it, the whole of this bidding, from the time it was the bid went through, from the time of the plan, you had COVID, you went into COVID, you had lockdown, you came out of COVID, all of those things. I think if anyone else looked at this whole situation, they'd say this building has gone through the perfect, and it has been a perfect storm to see where we are. And to quote a famous person, JFK, he said, "We chose to go to the moon in this decade because they are hard." I believe we have not gone to the moon, but we have overcome significant challenges to land where that we are in this evening. I'm sure you want to go further than what I've gone so far and go into deeper detail, and I'm sure I've got some help alongside me to go into them from being involved. We had contaminated ground on top of all the delays as well, everything's hit. But again, here we are, and all we can now do is look ahead with a prosperous future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you think, I know one or two of the members were concerned around the cost, as you say, and maybe our procurement process and how that could be tightened slightly. So, Lee, are you able to give us a brief history of events leading up to where we are?
Yeah, so
I think that would be really helpful, because what I'd like to do this week, I don't want to dwell too much on the past. We are where we are, and we've got here. The Scrutiny Committee's main objective should be looking at the future. But obviously, if we can learn lessons from the past, I think the first part of the meeting, or this item, look at that. A good point would be from yourself saying where it all began, to where we are today.
I'll give a little point of history, raised in relation to cost in particular. So the feasibility study was started in January 2020 for this building here today, and an application was submitted. If you remember, some things happened between January 2020 and September 2020. So that was when it started, and the original bid was for 1.97 million on about a 2.1 million project. In terms of what changed, you then had the Colby, who were the advisors who were building. So the building you're in today is not the original one that was done the feasibility study. That's 13 units. This is 24 units. That's an extra £300,000. About scope. So there's something about saying it's only when you nail down your scope that you really can start to nail down your costs. And if you kind of expand the thing that you want to do, it's going to cost more money. Something about kind of keeping close on cost, keeping close on scope, which has a cost. There was then a process of going out to tender, and we sort of went out to tender on the expanded scope, and tenders came back in. I'm just getting exactly. Yeah, so tenders were due to come back. Was extended to come back in December 2021. At that point on a £2.1 million project, because we slightly expanded it. Our cost consultants, in December, gave us an estimation by the market. The market told us what they thought they needed to charge at that time. The lowest tender came back at £3.9 million. We designed the thing prior to COVID, developed it through COVID. Even the cost consultants were, thought of it at a particular level, but the final money back at that moment in time in December 2021 with that price. And I think there's something there about, in terms of learning for the future, what do? Do you do it? Do you stick or twist? Do you say, actually, that's too much, we're not going to do it? Or do you say, no, this is really important, we're going to continue? And the decision was taken at that point to continue. And that meant going to our partners, Essex County Council, and asking for investment. And that investment, I do think that is a bit of a unique situation. You would not expect to go to your cost consultant, to go through that and be that much higher. But it does mean we need to be ready for that contingency. We're thinking about contingency for future projects as well. What's the contingency we need to put in, and how we manage that. We came forward and we appointed TJ Evers, and they took possession of the site in April 2022. And they started building then. The other point I'd make is if you go over budget and you have to talk to your partners to bring in more funding, that also brings in delay because obviously you've got to go and refinance the project. So TJ, and then the big thing that happened was that we're currently not sat on a pristine site. So we are now, but we weren't sat on a pristine site. There were 3 test holes dug in the area, but they didn't turn up much asbestos. I think there might have been a little bit of asbestos more, but it didn't turn up much asbestos. It turned out that when we excavated the whole site, we are currently sat on an asbestos gold mine. So that was the second big issue, the ground conditions, and we should never underestimate, I think, looking forward, the risk of the ground conditions, unless you've done particular work. You should also listen to local people who are very, people who've got experience and say, I can give you advice about, well, your test holes may say that there's nothing here, but I seem to remember that this or that happened at this point in time. So that's also important. And that, so as we kind of got into the ground and got into the ground conditions, we then had an increase in cost of about £760,000 in total. And the point about going to the moon, other people didn't make it to the moon. Other people fell by the wayside, and those ground conditions hit. And that's really what brought us to where we are today, which is a unique position and difficult ground.
Thanks very much. As I said, I'd like to do a small part of the meeting just on the past, because I think we can learn from that, hopefully, and we can learn from this project for other projects that come up. But I think particularly around tendering now, but let's hope we never face those conditions again. But it doesn't hurt to be prepared. Griffiths was been watching this quite closely on the finance front, so if you'd like to open.
I'm sorry, but I still have major difficulties with this. If you're putting in a quote on the 3rd of December, 0.7 million, I understand it. I understand there's market forces that could cause that. If process. Now, irrespective of whether or not, okay, from the time you put a report in to the time when the contractor puts in his bill 3 days later, you get a £1.1 total budget increase on the whole project. Now, 1.1 million in 3 days would indicate that your initial project base was way off, wasn't it? And I mean, this isn't the first one we're looking at, is it? Because there's a sheltered home complex in Walton where we had a that went up 3 times the original contract cost. There was also the football pitch, or the artificial pitch in the leisure centre, which I think went up 100,000 from when we put the actual cost in. So when we're actually looking at challenging financial times, and I accept that this isn't the current administration, and that when costs that are put into cabinet and the portfolio holders have to be somewhere near the ballpark of what we're actually looking at. And if there's a delay in you doing the project, and it's a 12-month delay or a 6-month delay, the revised figure that represents the actual cost should be going back to cabinet. Because, let's be honest, I would, or anybody else in this position, looking at £1.1 million increase in 3 days, that's not helpful to us, is it, as an administration? And if you're looking at challenging financial times, just saying to the finance portfolio, oh, by the way, you've just got another £1 million you've got to find, it makes challenging financial times very, very challenging. And how many others have we got where somebody in the administration could find another £1 million popping up in a couple of days? Because I think we need to look at this urgently and on what we're actually doing and review our portfolio and review our procurement process and where it actually works. And this isn't any way of criticism of either or the current administration, because this is something that we brought up in January at the budget scrutiny with the previous administration with Carla, because this is a concern when you're getting figures that are putting forward for projects, which in this case is admittedly the sums put in Joseph, but could be anything, where the actual figures in the report are bearing no relationship to the end product.
70-page bid to sell it, and everyone's kind of agreed that, signed it off, and then the actual construction. I think the 3 days is a slight misnomer in the sense that.
Well, it's the I-32 glory politics.
No, so I'm not taking that. So I'm not saying, what I'm saying is that the cost consultants were advising us that they thought that there might be a substantial increase on the 2.1. What they were out on was the scale of that. Right? And so it wasn't that it went from 2.7 in 3 days to that amount, it's that effectively when we went out to market it was nearly double what we thought it would be. Now, the point is that is the same across, you mentioned a number of projects, a lot of projects have been taking place across this shelf effectively of, genuinely was a time when capital costs went up nationally and internationally. So I absolutely wouldn't expect us to hit a similar shelf in the future. We need to be ready, we need to be wary, but it was a very particular time. The other point I make is that we obviously mentioned about cabinet. We obviously went back to cabinet because, as you say, you're in a different situation. You need to take a decision on that basis. The other thing I'd say in relation to that is, was it still value for money? Should we have continued? Was it still value for money? Well, the original bid, as I say, was for £1.9 million, 13 units. Said that the benefit cost ratio at that point was still 3.85, is that the building remained value for money at that point in time. So I think it's important to say it wasn't just, it was still good to do. I don't know if there's any points you wanted to.
I think the only thing I wanted to say, I mean, obviously I can't talk about some of the projects, I can only talk about this one. But the time that our time that the actual bids came in was the time when it was really hard to get materials, and if you remember we had shortage of wood, etc., and the prices were going sky high. So what they were finding sort of nationally, that contractors were building in extra risk because they didn't know what those costs of those materials were going to be over a few months, because they were fluctuating so much. It was becoming a national trend that they were adding in those extra cost pressures. So that's another reason that it was a lot higher than what we originally expected.
Future-proofing this administration or other administrations from similar costs on major projects, because you don't need many £1.1 million increases across the board to call you short, when you're facing financial issues anyway in the coming years. So what actions are we actually taking to ensure that when I've been sitting there at cabinet, the figure that he's got somewhere resembles the actual cost? And what do we learn from this, and how are we future-proofing our cabinet for similar rises?
So, throughout, which is that we have to have the capability in-house to be able to develop bids in the first place. We have to have the quality cost consultants, and in reality, all that we have to do is to rely on the quality of advice we've got, and then if it does transpire, as it did at this point, that because of very unusual external circumstances, the gap was different, we had to be very clear that we were going back to Cabinet and saying, you know, that was the position, and it was perfectly reasonable for us to be in that position with the information we had at the time. We're now in this, and this is what the market said. What do you want to do? And it may be that if we were to end up in a situation where things are double, see why that happened again, because we're not shutting down China and opening up the rest of the world again, which is what happened at this moment, as Barbara was saying, with access to material. But if you are, you just have to be open and say, well, we've done everything right in terms of due diligence, here we are now, this is the situation, do you want to progress or not? And it may be that if the funds aren't there and it's not the right time, you can't progress if actually things are done.
Yeah, no, and the evidence I've seen is from our partners that all of them were saying that it wasn't purely based on a finance investment, it was based on a seller themselves, because they said here the project is considered a high value for money. So even though all of this was swimming around with all these changes in finance, the partners who were still willing to invest were still saying this is the right thing to do, to keep going, because the benefits outweigh these barriers and hits that you're taking on the finance. On the back of what you're saying, Chris, the learning curve, you're absolutely right. And again, I've said here, we will have a working party where I will update regularly, we will update regularly, members will be updated and members will be able to challenge all the way through. Drift stroke free. As long as members come to us saying, why don't you do this, why don't you do that, it goes outside of what we're going to do. We've got to actually stay tight to what we it's not just our cost, it's Essex County Council's cost. So there'll be a lot of interest on this to make sure and it doesn't go on. And on the project of the Love, we've already engaged an experienced capital delivery manager. So we've already met him and he will be telling us what the risks are, risk registers, and we're going to see the lot as we go forward with that. And again, that will be shown to our partners for them to make those decisions as well. So I think everyone's learned lessons from what I hear, and when I sat down with people, we are going to make sure that we do this affordable but achievable.
Do we have anyone else wishing to ask? I think, as I say, I was involved at that time, and I know it was, there were some challenging decisions, shall we say, or do we just give up? And I think my personal view is we made the right decision. I think only time will tell on that, but it's here, so that's where we are. So I think we'll have a brief discussion on that, and it'll be good if we can come up with any recommendations to secure for the future. But the main thing I wanted to look at was basically where we go from here, and it helps Joe Sands to reach his full potential. So there's, I know we had a meeting the other night, a brief chat, and we came up with a few thoughts and ideas, and I wonder if anyone wants to ask a question.
Jake had a sunspot in the past, which consisted of indoor cash and a covered market. What is the difference now to be successful?
So now we're doing it as, we've still got the indoor market and we've still got the cafe, so we wanted to bring that back to the community. We also are very aware at the moment that Tendring have got a really good nucleus of new businesses starting, but there's nowhere for them to get that first foothold. So I wanted to make it affordable space for new businesses to start. We also wanted with the retail units to be able to bring that retail side in, so we can bring the footfall, bring the income into the area as well, provide jobs, but also give the community the gardens, event space, which should be used by the community. And we just want to make an area that they can come and be proud of and be a part of. So we want to make it, although it's predominantly business units within the building, we want to make sure that the community have that feel for it as well, that it is part of the community.
Can I, just on the back of what Barbara said, I've met some of the businesses which are coming in here, and they are so excited about coming into this building, and that says all to me. And if there are others, and you've just heard, I knew of 8, and now we're talking about area. And I think Paul mentioned it earlier. It's actually centred that, and I've been involved in Jacob over the years as well. This is not going to solve all the problems of Jacob. We know that. This is part of the jigsaw. There's still real big challenges for Jacob, but this is right on the entrance of Jacob. It gives a positive feel to those people. It gives a feel that people all of a sudden aren't. So I think the overall project actually has got a huge number of benefits for what was here.
Yeah, and I must admit I'm very positive about it. And my other question was, apart from the launch day that is this Saturday, I believe, stall holders or the general public, like, is there going to be like a Christmas market? Or?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, we've just really focused on getting the building open, and we wanted to make sure that we did the big community, because we totally appreciate that they've put up with a lot from us, especially when we've been taking up the roads and all sorts. So we really wanted to give something back, so that's why we wanted to do the big community day, just to launch it and, you know, make it accessible. But yes, now we've got Mick on site, the idea is that we will be looking at facilitating other events. Will be available for people to be able to book events as much as we can. I have had initial talks to partners about whether or not we can facilitate things like children's activities in the school. But at the moment, as I say, there's just been so much focus on just getting over the line. We've got a lot of plans, and obviously we also need to be looking at funding for those as well. So it will probably be small steps to start with until we can actually accumulate sort of that income to make it sustainable, and then we can look at making bigger events.
Okay, thank you.
And there is a booking system.
Yes, we have a booking system, yes, and we try to keep even the event area as sort of low cost as, you know, so, yeah, they'll be able to book online.
Does anyone else have any questions? Just go ahead.
I'm just wondering, because everything else I just wonder whether or not there would be any mileage in health services or health support workers, something like blood pressure checks or blood glucose checks, or, you know, helping people with how to manage chronic pain. Because you've actually already got your audience here, and there will be people that will come into the market that may not want to go out.
Yeah, we have, obviously with it being for businesses, mainly, we're not necessarily looking for a position here. But one of the things that we have talked about is whether or not we can run regular services out of this room
Yeah.
and actually use it, you know, if they want a half day or something to do blood pressure or whatever. And obviously things like the market stalls and things like that are all, we've got, I believe NHS coming down for Community Day, we've got a lot of the other partners coming as well. So, yeah, we'll keep in contact, and obviously if there's something they do want to run out here, we're more than happy to talk to them and see if we can plan it.
And I think Barbara's actually, from what I understand it, is as one-offs like that, but if there was a regular request to take over you, then there's a criteria and an agreement that we set with our partners for the funding.
That's right.
To at the moment, and that looks like that take up is improved. Good opportunities.
Yeah.
Okay. Down there in the big pig machine then.
Okay, Adrian?
I just wondered what with the superfast.
Sure. So just picking up on those issues that were.
As just said, I think big sums of money that changes in 3 days. Obviously, in the new administration, if that was me, in my charity I run, and I saw a big bill that was different in the increase in council Griffiths is right. One, it's a lot of money in 3 days, a 1.1 increase in 3 days. So, consultants knew, or did they change things? Was it like, you know, unforeseen circumstances that happened? they're the kind of things, and I think we're right to say, to put the cabinet, and I think it may be good idea to come back in 6 months' time to have an update of the cafeteria, because I think it'd be good in 6 months' time to come back and see what's happened and see what's worked, what hasn't worked. I mean, again, I was a bit hesitant about the parking spaces here, and before all councils turned up, I was there early and I looked around the site and looked at the car parking spaces. Sufficient parking space now. Previously I wasn't, but now after having a look around, I think I'm confident now that there's enough parking spaces. I did ask Mr. Powell with reference to charging, and I understand that's just for the tenants only. I'll be interested in how we police that. I would like to see possibly that you may open to people turning up, use the market, the shops or the facilities there, and then charge their vehicle up. Because I can't guarantee, we can't guarantee that every tenant is going to have an electric car. If every tenant's not going to have an electric car, then those electric charge.
Asset, considering where we are and the importance of the site like this.
If Councillor Griffiths is going to put that as a proposal, I'm glad it's the second.
Yeah, I mean, my thought to say is then, from what we're hearing, is that we don't make a recommendation at this point. We wait until April when we can review. So we've gathered the information, we've heard what's said. We'll obviously see the minutes of this meeting in April. We're talking about annually. There's a couple of things I want to remind you. Firstly, we have got a big work. Can I ask whoever you'd like to come along.
I just think we're going to, also we're going to write an annual report, so it'll be there for future generations. It would be good to have them write some of that report.
Sure, and I think that's a function for the portfolio holder in actual fact to receive that report, so I would hope that that's the reality of the situation.
So, are we happy with that as a decision at this point? Or recommendation?
The council, they can do it. Because if you've got some of the older ones, especially in winter, it's a lot easier than maybe trying to get into the sort of housing office in Bear Avenue or something like that. And if you've already got somebody sitting there in the office, why not look at seeing lining?
That question will be posed, Chairman.
Yeah, it's not a problem. As I say, we do have a presence in the enterprise centre at the moment because of the work that's going on. Our vision consultation. Now, this is something that's not out. My thoughts is, do we wait until we hear what residents got to say before we? Chris?
I think it's going to be very difficult to review a consultation if we don't know what the results.
Okay. Right, so yeah, Chairman, I think it's right that we just wait, what Councillor Griffiths say, wait to the end.
We'll just know budget adjustments, there is that time. Budget adjustments, there is that time. On the basis that we end on the 25th, we've to Cabinet in November, you will appreciate that, around that time anyway, Cabinet will be looking at the draft budget for 24. Is the opportunity to start that thought process. And then that will go back to January for a finalised budget and then off to full council